This is Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield, a podcast that resources families and friends with tools to have important conversations about mental and emotional health. This show is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Here's your host, Trever Shirin.
Thank you for joining us again on Candid Conversations. I'm Trevor, and I'm joined by Dr. Mayfield himself.
I'm here.
You are here, and as far as I've been able to tell today, you are yourself.
That's good. I'm glad. Sometimes I wonder.
Last week, we talked about our first set of core longings, which are love and safety. Mm-hmm. And today, we will be talking about acceptance and understanding. The second set of core longings. Highly suggest that you go back and listen to last week's episode if you haven't yet. But either way, I think that this will be a really helpful discussion for you.
Well, it's interesting because last week we talked, love and safety. It's a little bit easier, maybe, to kind of understand and parse out those things.
Sure.
But as I've been preparing for today's acceptance and understanding, there's so many different meanings around that, which I think could be good, also can be frustrating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that, we talked about how the definition of safety or what fulfilled it was different for your wife than it was for you.
Right.
And I think it's more so true with acceptance and understanding because, I love the video on YouTube of It's Not About the Nail. And for me, that speaks to being understood rather than being fixed. However, for my wife, she feels sometimes more understood if I can offer a solution. Whereas for me, it's very much the opposite.
Just listen.
And so it can be drastically different. And I think it even goes deeper than you heard me. It goes to the point of not only did I hear you, but I hear what you're not saying. And I understand the context of our relationship and what I know about you. And putting all that together, I can empathize with where you're coming from and see what's going on.
Right. And I think maybe this is where I just went. It's funny how that happens. But I just went back to middle school for a second. Mm-hmm. Like, I need some therapy now. But
you're regressing.
Yeah, I'm regressing. Oh my gosh, this is freaking me out here. But think about what acceptance and understanding meant for you in middle school versus what it meant for you now, right? And and you're in your 20s, I'm in my 30s. So, you've got 10 years, I've got 20 years, but still it's if you think about acceptance in middle school, it was
it's all about girls for me.
Okay. All about girls for you? I mean, for me, it was trying to connect and to relate. Like, I was a pretty shy, not so much sheltered. I think in some ways I sheltered myself, but it was, a pretty shy, reserved kid that really desired to be accepted.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, some of the things I'd create, like we weren't allowed to drink much soda growing up. And so, a kid would say something about their favorite soda being Mountain Dew. And I'm like, oh, me too. I never had it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And it's the deep desire to go, am I in? Do I fit in? Well,
and if you look at Erickson's stages of development, he talks a lot about how that stage of your life is very much about being accepted into a group and how it's beneficial for us to go through that because we're learning how to be part of the norm of society rather than isolated.
Well, you think about some of the things that I even agreed to when I was in high school and middle school that I wouldn't have probably, but just because I wanted to be accepted.
Yeah. Well, and you had an undeveloped frontal lobe too, which I think makes a big difference.
Big difference.
Kids are easily malleable.
Well, the funny thing is you're on the right side of the brain development because of because your generation is not part of the the iPhone generation.
Yeah.
So you're fully developed as well.
Well, I don't know, because when I was in high school, they said 21 was fully developed frontal lobe. And then I turned 20, and they said 23. I turned 22,
and 25.
And they said 25, and now I'm 26, and I think they're saying closer to 30. So I probably won't ever catch up.
No, but here's the thing. You don't do drugs, right? You're not smoking pot or doing all kind so I think you're good. But you're right. I think it's that the definition of acceptance and understanding changed throughout our lifespan. And so I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute. But what does it look like for you now?
Yeah,
and I'll answer that as well. But
yeah, I think right now, specifically with acceptance, it is primarily my wife, and then my family. And as well as like two close friends, Chris Jordal and Peter Jordal. Like if those people accept me in the way that when I come to them, they want to be around me, they have affection and enjoy having me around, and I enjoy having them. And when I come up with ideas of like, hey, we should do this, it's at least thought about and considered. Not dismissed. And run over. I think understanding is if I go to my wife and I say, babe, I am really suffering from syllabus shock right now. And I am falling.
Which is true.
Yeah. And I am falling apart. And to hear her reflect back to me what I'm saying and say, you do this every semester. And last week you were telling me that you didn't feel like your life had any purpose because you didn't have any school, and now you're complaining about being too busy. And even though it's humorous and a little bit controversial, hearing that from her is very much like, I know you, Trevor.
Right.
I know what's going on that you're not saying, and I can show you the greater context of where you are in this moment. I think those are two places that right now have satisfied the core longings of acceptance and understanding.
No, I like that. Yeah, as I'm thinking about that too, so I'm, almost 12 years older, and so kind of it's a little bit different for me. I think I can relate to where you're at now, where I was at, because I was in my master's program same time, at same age, and that kind of stuff, right? So, but for me, I think acceptance is more internal. Like I've been thinking about this a little bit in preparation. I think for me, it's, am I just okay with myself? Am I okay with the decisions I'm making? Am I okay with life if it doesn't turn out the way that I've hoped it would? Am I okay with those kind of things? But I think also too, my marriage is absolutely fantastic, and we've worked really hard at that. And I think that's a part of it. But we're kind of in that, not autopilot, because we still work pretty hard at it, but it's that we've hit our stride.
I talked to Adam Smith the other day about marriage being hard, and I came up with the metaphor of it's hard the same way that gravity exists, where it's always there, and sometimes we think about it more than others, and sometimes it really prevents us from doing things that we wish we could. But ultimately, like I think it's not as like trying.
No.
In the majority, like there are absolutely
there are times, sure.
But I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that metaphor.
No, it's a good metaphor.
I was proud of it.
That's good. I like it. Well, I think that too, and I think I've got, I think back when I was in my 20s, I just deeply desired to have multiple friends, and I think now we've got, 3 or 4 couple friends and just individual friends that we're, if that expands more than that, great, and if it doesn't, I'm pretty okay with that. But I'm also, introvert, and especially in this job. Being home and
I just don't want to talk to people.
Nothing is wonderful. So I think that for acceptance, that's and it's funny because I'm thinking, going back to the middle school piece, like right now, if somebody's like, I like this, and this, and I'm like, oh, great, good for you. I don't.
Right.
And if you don't like me because of it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, I think a huge part that I'm recognizing as you're saying that is with acceptance and understanding, it is really important that we know who we need that from.
Yes.
Because it's been said by 100 different people, but I really like the idea that Eleanor Roosevelt says it of you'll stop caring about what people think of you when you realize how little they'd actually do.
Right.
And when I'm walking around the King Supers or something, like being able to recognize in myself, like nobody here knows me and nobody here really matters to my life right now, and I may never see these people ever again, and so it doesn't matter what they think about me, and also they probably aren't thinking about me.
Right. So we've given them way too much credence. Well, I think about that too with people that I'm working with in sessions is, they bring these things up, so-and-so, so-and-so, and I'm like, how much power are they having over you?
Right.
And I wonder how much they actually really are thinking about you. And I worked with, probably a couple of years ago, a client that was just, this individual just started bawling in my office going, you're right, I've never thought about it that way, that I've given this person so much power because I'm wanting them to accept me, and they're probably not even giving me the time of day.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we get caught up in a situation where we go to a place, we say something, the person gives us a look, and we take it as you're an idiot.
Right.
And what's really happening is there's some what we call transference happening, where it's not necessarily that they're feeling like we're stupid, it's us feeling like we're stupid and putting that on another person. And if our core longings are fulfilled, we then don't have anything to project onto the other person. Right. And so they can give us that look, and we can be like, I wonder what was going on with them that they gave me that look. Or we can have an understanding of like, yeah, that probably was a dumb question. Like, I wonder why I thought that. Rather than I'm a miserable person because this person gave me that look. And so I think that speaks to like why these core longings are important, because it paints the way that we see the world.
I agree. I'm thinking about understanding too now. I think back in the day it was, hear me and then tell me I'm going to be okay.
Right. Which sounds really nice.
Sounds really nice. Sounds like a Nicholas Sparks movie or something like that, The Notebook or whatever. Sorry if I offended anybody, because my wife likes that movie, and I'll watch it with her.
That's how I want to go out.
I'll leave it as I want to go out. That sounds good. But for me, understanding has been really interesting. And I think for me, understanding has been, I'll just use our marriage, letting her know what I need in those moments, and then I think it's speaking the need. But like for, I'm going through a rough time, or I'm freaking out, or my anxiety's peaking, and she just comes up and she goes, I'm sorry. That's got to really suck. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah. And, and then one thing that she does really good, and I think we do together, is there anything you need? Mm-hmm. Right? Instead of assuming I need to be fixed, or so no, I just need a hug, or I need you to sit with me right now, or, but even one step beyond. And I think this is something that we've really gotten good at in our marriage is, I noticed, I saw Sarah the other day, this morning, and she just had a rough night, or didn't sleep well, the girls were up or whatever. And I know what makes her feel seen. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to bring that home, whether it be a favorite dessert, some flowers, a favorite movie, a book, or something like that. And so it's anticipating that need is I think, a really beautiful way to be understood.
Yeah, and we talk about that aspect in our gift giving episode as well.
It's funny how these all intertwine, right?
Yeah, it's like it's all part of one big growth process or something.
Yes.
So we did this last week as well, and it's probably the same this week. But what can we do this week leading up to next week's conversation about the next two core longings that can help us understand where we are with acceptance and understanding?
Well, I think you and I have not said this, but I think we've alluded to this, is asking yourself the question, am I comfortable in my own skin? You think about, there's always going to be something that you're not comfortable with.
Sure.
Whether it be a feature or a size or whatever. And so how do we become comfortable in our own skin, I think, is a big deal, so that we're not transferring those things on, like you talked about, to other people. I think for acceptance, though, it's like, do we accept ourselves?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? That's a big existential question, but it's this idea of, am I okay with me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the rough edges, the whatever. And then I think for understanding is, what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. For me, like you and I had similar but different definitions of that. For me, it was like, just recognize that I'm not okay, and share with me that sucks. Mm-hmm. And offer a question. Do you want me to fix it? Do you want me to sit here? Do you, instead of assuming? I don't know, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. But I also think, too, of just taking stock of, of those pros and cons too. I think it'd be good.
Well, and I'm thinking about we're starting a new show at Mayfield Counseling Centers called the Monday Minute that I hope that you'll subscribe to.
Yes.
Social media, our Facebook page, and the YouTube channel Mayfield Counseling Centers. But this idea of just being mindfully present with ourselves and acknowledging in this very moment, I am who I am, and everything that has happened to me has happened. And it's kind of this DBT style, like radical acceptance. Like, it is what it is, and I can't change it. And right now is just right now. Like, it is.
Be okay
and to ground ourselves in this very moment that we're in and accept that it's all done. Like, everything has happened. Everything has made us what we are at this moment. And now we can move forward. And as we move forward, we kind of get this, it brings us into connection more, but also gives us a little bit of distance from ourselves, where we can say, okay, yeah, I can't change the fact that this happened when I was a little kid, or the fact that I did this morning, or that this habit is formed in me, or whatever it is. But being able to say, from this moment on, and I love the movie The Greatest Showman, and the idea of, like, from now on.
Right.
That song has so much power of, like, from now on, I'm not going to deal with, like, that shame of whatever. I'm going to accept where I am right now. Right. And I'm going to move forward.
Without judgment. I think it's beautiful. I like that song. I think watch the movie again.
Love that.
It's one of our girls' favorite movie.
This Is Me.
This Is Me.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Good counseling songs.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
If I could just have that on repeat.
Do logotherapy with that one. But I like that. And I think, but that's the question I think that our listeners are going to ask is, how do we do that? And I think not to repeat ourselves, but this is where a third party really comes in, whether it be a good friend, a faith leader, or a mentor, or a counselor.
And you could even go to a counselor and say, hey, I just want one session where I can learn some mindfulness skills to bring me into the present.
Right, which is what we've been pushing for so long, is just mental health checkups, right? So we don't know what we don't know until we know it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's having a third party, and Mayfield Counseling can do mental health checkups where we do a 90-minute session and we do some tests and just kind of gauge where you're at.
Yep.
And then we might say, hey, your anxiety is a little high. Maybe you need to come back in for a couple sessions versus, hey, you're doing great, and here's some tools, and we'll see you in 3 months or whatever.
Here's a few books you could read, or some videos that you could watch, or like, I think that we put a really heavy weight on counseling being a long process, like the Freudian style.
Sure.
Like, I have to do it for 10 years.
It can be. Mm-hmm. But for the right reasons, not because you're mentally ill. And I hate that term, mentally ill. I think mental health, mental wellness are things that we look at because it's a positive thing of going, what can I do to increase and improve those things in my life? I think when we stay stuck in a mental illness framework, it's medical model, it's prescriptive, it can be a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what can we do to increase our wellness?
Yeah.
And if we do that, then we're going to be a pretty...
Right. Well, and even if we think of it like a haircut, one of the reasons that we get haircuts is to make sure that our hair is healthy, because, it grows out, the end split, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. But I think if we think about mental health that way, we're constantly changing and growing as people, or we're stagnated. Either one needs something to come in and give us a slight adjustment. Even if it's, 5 inches, then it's 5 inches and we're going from long hair to short hair. Or it can be, the very slightest change that just gets rid of those edges, those corners that need some adjustment and help us to feel better about where we are and the health of our hair and our hearts and our minds. I think that's a really, it lowers the threshold of what counseling has to be, where now it's like, oh yeah, I could probably use a haircut.
Right. I'm not crazy. I hate that term.
Yeah.
No, I'm just struggling.
Right.
And I need some support.
And sometimes if you don't get a haircut, you can look crazy.
Ooh. Sit with that for a second. Well, I hope that you are learning as we are. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I'm learning as we talk about it, or just reminiscing as we talk about it, reminding myself of things that I need to think about. So join us next week for the last two. And then if you have any questions, let us know.
We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, you can email candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or call 719-452-4803.